I didn't find out my girlfriend was cheating by catching her. I found out because her boss accidentally introduced me as her brother, and she didn't correct him. It happened at a company event I wasn't even supposed to attend. She'd begged me to come last minute, said it would look good, said people would finally stop asking questions if they saw us together. That should have been my first warning. The venue was loud, expensive, full of people who dressed like confidence was part of their paycheck. I stayed close to her at first, hand on her back, trying not to feel out of place. Then she drifted, not physically at first, emotionally. Her laugh changed, her posture straightened. Her eyes kept tracking one man across the room, her boss. When he finally came over, she lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. He shook my hand, smiled politely, and said, "So you're her brother." Brother. The word hit me sideways. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh and correct him. She didn't. She smiled and said, "Yeah, he helped me out a lot when I was starting." Helped her out. I didn't say anything. I stood there, suddenly invisible, watching them fall into an easy rhythm. Inside jokes, shared glances, a kind of closeness that didn't need explaining. He excused himself a moment later. I asked her what that was about. She rolled her eyes and said, "It's just easier. Easier than saying I was her boyfriend of 3 years." She said work was complicated, that her boss didn't like mixing personal stuff, that it was better this way. I let it go. That was mistake number 1. After the event, she was in a great mood, talkative, energized, said her boss was impressed with her lately, said big things were coming. I asked if I was still her boyfriend. She laughed and said I was being sensitive. That night, she fell asleep scrolling her phone, smiling at something she didn't share. A week later, she started staying late. Again, meetings, deadlines, emergencies that couldn't wait. Her phone was always on silent now. She guarded it without realizing she was doing it. Screen tilted away. Notifications cleared too quickly. Password changed for security. I asked her once if something was going on. She said, "Why do you always assume the worst?" I apologized. That was mistake number 2. Then the changes got subtler. She stopped asking about my day, stopped making future plans, stopped saying we when she talked about anything ahead. She started saying I. I noticed she dressed differently for work, sharper, more intentional, clothes she never wore on weekends with me. One night, she came home close to midnight. She smelled like cologne, not mine. I asked if she'd been drinking. She said yes. I asked with who. She said coworkers. I asked which ones. She said, "Why does it matter?" Because it did. Because it always does. A few days later, I found something I wasn't looking for. Her phone was charging on the counter while she showered. A message popped up from a name I recognized immediately. Her boss. It said, "I keep replaying last night." That was it. No emojis. No context. No explanation. Just enough. I didn't open it. I didn't touch the phone. I felt cold. When she came out of the shower, I asked how work was going. She said, "Really good." I asked if she was happy. She hesitated just for a second, then said yes. I asked if she was still attracted to me. She laughed awkwardly and said, "Where is this coming from?" I told her I felt like she was pulling away. She said I was imagining things. That was when I knew. Not because of the message, because of how easily she dismissed me. Later that night, I asked her directly if anything inappropriate was happening with her boss. She didn't deny it. She said, "It's complicated." That word again. Complicated. I asked what that meant. She said, "I need you to trust me." I asked if she was sleeping with him. She said, "Not like that. Not like that." I asked what that meant. She didn't answer. She went to bed and turned her back to me. I stayed awake, staring at the wall, realizing something awful. I wasn't competing with another man. I was already replaced, and I was the only one who hadn't been told yet. The next morning, She acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, asked if I wanted eggs, complained about traffic like we were still normal. I watched her move around the kitchen and felt like I was living with a stranger wearing her face. I asked if we were going to talk about last night. She said, "There's nothing to talk about." I asked if she meant that or if she just didn't want to talk. She sighed and said, "You're exhausting lately." That word landed harder than any insult. Exhausting, as if my confusion was an inconvenience. I asked if she was emotionally involved with him. She said, "That's not cheating." I asked if she would be okay with me doing the same thing with someone else. She didn't answer. She grabbed her bag and left for work. That day felt endless. Every sound in the apartment made me jump. Every passing hour felt like I was waiting for confirmation of something I already knew. When she finally texted, it wasn't reassurance. It was, "Working late again. Don't wait up." I didn't respond. That night, I replayed everything. The brother introduction, the new clothes, the guarded phone, the cologne. All of it lined up too cleanly to be coincidence. Around midnight, I heard her come in. She moved quietly, like she hoped I was asleep. I asked where she'd been. She froze. Then she said, "Work." I asked why she smelled like him. She snapped and said I was paranoid. I asked her to look me in the eye and say nothing was going on. She couldn't. She said, "I don't want to hurt you." That sentence told me everything. I asked if she loved him. She said, "I don't know." I asked if she loved me. She said, "I care about you deeply. Care again. Always care. Never love." She told me she felt stuck, that she'd outgrown the relationship, that he challenged her, that being with him felt inevitable. I asked if she'd been honest with him about me. She said she told him we were basically done. I asked why she didn't tell me that. She said she was waiting for the right time. She asked for space. I asked how much. She said, "A few weeks. Weeks where she'd keep seeing him while I sat in limbo." I told her I couldn't do that. She accused me of trying to control her. I asked if boundaries were control now. She didn't answer. She slept on the couch that night. Her phone buzzed once, then twice, then stopped. I wondered if he was reassuring her, if he was telling her everything would be okay, if he was already planning a future that didn't include me. The next day, I packed a bag, not to leave permanently, just to breathe. When I told her, she looked shocked. She said, "I didn't think you'd actually go." That hurt more than anything else. I stayed with a friend for 3 days. She didn't call. She didn't text. On the 4th day, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "We need to talk. She hasn't told you everything." My heart dropped. I asked who it was. The reply came quickly. Her boss. And that's when everything unraveled. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Part of me wanted to block the number. Part of me wanted to pretend none of this was real. But a bigger part needed the truth, even if it finished destroying what was left. I asked him what he wanted. He said he didn't like how things were going and thought I deserved honesty. That alone made me sick. He suggested we meet. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe near his office. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. He was calm. Confident. The kind of man who's used to being believed. He told me he hadn't planned for things to get emotional, that he never intended to hurt anyone, that she came to him during a difficult time and leaned on him for support. I asked how long they'd been sleeping together. He didn't correct me. He said, "A while." I asked if he knew she still lived with me. He said yes. I asked why he introduced me as her brother. He looked uncomfortable for the first time and said, "That was her idea." That one sentence rewrote everything. I asked if she talked about me. He said yes. I asked what she said. He hesitated, then said, "That you were kind, safe, but not who she wanted anymore." Safe. That word followed me everywhere. He said she'd been planning to leave for months, but didn't want to deal with the fallout. That she was waiting for the right moment. I asked what that moment was. He said, when she felt secure enough to lose me. I thanked him for his honesty. He seemed relieved, like he'd just handed off a problem he didn't want anymore. When I got back to the apartment, she was there. She looked nervous. She asked where I'd been. I told her I met him. Her face drained of color. She asked what he said. I told her everything. She cried. Not softly, not quietly, full panic. She said he manipulated her, that she was confused, that she didn't know how things got so out of control. I asked why she told him I was her brother. She said she didn't want him to see me as competition. I asked why she stayed if she'd already decided to leave. She said she didn't want to hurt me. I asked how this was better. She didn't answer. I told her I was done. She begged, promised to cut contact, to quit her job, to fix things. I asked why I was suddenly worth fighting for now. She said she was scared of losing me. I said she already had. She moved out that night. A month later, I heard she transferred departments. 2 months later, she and her boss stopped seeing each other. Apparently, once I was gone, the relationship lost its excitement. She tried to reach out again. I didn't respond, because the hardest lesson I learned wasn't about cheating. It was about how easily someone can erase you when they're already imagining life without you, and how important it is to walk away the moment you realize you're being treated like a placeholder instead of a partner. If you stayed till the end, you know these stories aren't about drama, they're about self-respect. Subscribe for more intense Reddit-style relationship stories about cheating, betrayal, and choosing yourself when no one else does. I found out my girlfriend wasn't just sleeping late at the office. She was sleeping her way into a promotion, and her boss knew my name. I didn't catch them together. I didn't read messages by snooping. I found out because he called me. Here's how it happened. My girlfriend, Laura, had been struggling at work for months. Long hours, sudden meetings, a boss she talked about more than any coworker should. She said he was demanding but supportive, hard on everyone, especially her. Then the promotion came out of nowhere. Same pay band, different title, temporary leadership role. She came home glowing, said it was finally paying off. I celebrated with her, bought wine, took pictures. That night, she fell asleep smiling. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number during lunch. I almost ignored it. A calm male voice said my full name. He said, "I think you deserve to know what's going on between your girlfriend and me." I laughed, thought it was a prank. Then he said Laura's last name, then her job title, then details only someone close would know. He didn't sound angry, or drunk, or smug. He sounded tired. He told me he was her boss. He said things had gone further than they should have. I asked why he was telling me. He paused, then said, "Because she told me you'd never find out, and I don't like being lied about." That sentence stuck. Before I could respond, he said something worse. "She says you depend on her, that leaving you would be messy." Depend on her? He apologized, said he'd end things professionally, said he wanted a clean conscience. Then he hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to convince myself this wasn't real. When Laura got home that night, she kissed me like nothing had changed. I didn't confront her, not yet, because something felt off, and I needed to know how deep it really went before I said a word. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry yet, but because everything I thought I knew suddenly felt unreliable. Laura slept next to me like always, one arm across my chest, breathing steady, peaceful. The same woman who, hours earlier, had apparently told another man that I depended on her and would be messy to leave. That word kept looping in my head. Messy, like I was a chore. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work like it was a performance meant just for me. She complained about traffic, rolled her eyes about meetings, kissed my cheek and said, "Wish me luck." I almost asked her right then. Instead, I said nothing. I needed proof, not for a breakup, but for my sanity. Over the next week, I paid attention in a way I never had before. Her phone was always face down now. She muted notifications. She stepped outside to take calls she used to answer in front of me. When I asked how work was going, she gave vague answers. Same stuff. Busy. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. Apparently, I never had. One night, she came home later than usual. She smelled different. Not perfume, something sharper. Expensive. I asked if she'd eaten. She said yes. Her stomach growled 5 minutes later. I asked if everything was okay between us. She smiled and said, "Why wouldn't it be?" That question felt like a warning. A few days later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our shared laptop. She'd forgotten to log out of her email. I didn't scroll immediately. I stared at the screen for a long time, hoping guilt would stop me. Didn't. I searched his name. The emails weren't explicit. That almost made it worse. Inside jokes. Late night timestamps. We should be more careful. Yesterday was intense. Next time, maybe not at the office. One email ended with, "I can't wait to see you again. I hate sneaking around." I felt my chest go tight. Sneaking around. Not hiding. Sneaking. Like it was thrilling. I closed the laptop and went for a walk. No destination. Just movement. I needed air that didn't feel contaminated by lies. When I came back, Laura was in the kitchen humming. She asked if I wanted dinner. I looked at her hands. The same hands that held mine. The same hands typing those messages. I asked her if she was happy. She said, "Of course." I asked if she felt appreciated at work. Her eyes lit up. She talked for 10 minutes straight about her boss. How he really saw her. How he recognized her potential. How he pushed her. She didn't notice my silence. Or maybe she did and didn't care. That night, she asked if something was wrong. I said I was just tired. She rolled over and went to sleep. The next day, her boss called me again. This time, I didn't hesitate. He asked if I'd talk to her. I said no. He sighed and said, "She told me you wouldn't." I asked him how long it had been going on. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Long enough that she started making plans." Plans. I asked what kind. He said, "Plans that didn't include you." That's when the anger finally showed up. Not explosive. Not loud. Cold. I asked why he was still calling me. He said, "Because she told me if this blew up, you'd be the bad guy. That you were unstable, dependent, emotional." He paused. "I don't think that's fair." That was the moment I understood something awful. She hadn't just cheated. She'd been preparing to replace me, and rewriting who I was in the process. That night, I didn't wait. I asked her directly, "Are you sleeping with your boss?" She didn't deny it. She looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. And the way she answered shattered whatever hope I still had left. When I asked her, she didn't panic. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She sighed, like I'd asked a stupid question. "Yes," she said, "but it's not what you're making it into." That sentence flipped something in me. I asked how long. She said, "A few months." Like she was talking about a gym membership. I asked why. She leaned against the counter and said, "Because he understands me." That hurt more than any detail ever could. I asked if she ever planned to tell me. She hesitated, then said, "I didn't want to hurt you." I reminded her that she already had. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being dramatic." Dramatic. That word again. I asked if she told him I depended on her. She didn't deny that either. She said, "I didn't mean it like that." I asked how she meant it. She said, "You'd struggle without me. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. By cheating. By lying. By planning a future without me while I slept next to her every night." I asked if she loved him. She said, "That's not fair." I asked if she loved me. She didn't answer. Silence again. She told me the promotion wasn't because of the relationship. that it would have happened anyway, that I was focusing on the wrong thing. I asked if she planned to leave me. She said, eventually, like it was already scheduled. She said she'd been unhappy for a long time, that I was comfortable, that he made her feel alive, that she didn't think monogamy was as important as people pretend. She said all this calmly, like she'd practiced. I realized then she wasn't confessing. She was justifying. I asked her why she stayed if she felt that way. She said, because you're safe. That was the moment something snapped. Not rage, clarity. I told her she could have honesty or safety, not both. She looked confused. I told her to pack a bag. She laughed at first, thought I was bluffing. Then she saw my face. She asked where she'd go. I said, ask your boss. That wiped the smile right off her face. She accused me of being cruel, of throwing away years, of not fighting for us. I asked what exactly I was supposed to fight for. She couldn't answer. She left that night. The apartment felt bigger immediately, quieter, lighter. 2 days later, she texted asking if we could talk. I didn't reply. A week later, her boss emailed me apologizing again, saying he hoped I was okay. I blocked him. Friends reached out. Some already knew. Others were shocked. Apparently, she'd told people we were growing apart and that the relationship was already over when she met him. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to defend the truth anymore. Months later, I ran into her by accident. She looked different, tired, smaller. She said the job didn't work out the way she expected, that things got complicated. She asked if I was seeing anyone. I said yes, even though I wasn't. She nodded like she deserved that answer. Before she left, she said, I never meant to hurt you. I didn't argue. Intent doesn't erase impact. What I learned from all this wasn't about cheating. It was about how easily someone can rewrite you in their head to justify what they want, and how dangerous it is to stay once you feel yourself shrinking to fit someone else's story. If you made it to the end, you already know these stories don't end clean, they end real. Subscribe for more intense Reddit-style relationship stories about betrayal, cheating, and the moments that change everything. I didn't find out my girlfriend was cheating because I was suspicious. I found out because her boss sent her flowers to our apartment and signed the card like I already knew. I came home early that day, middle of the afternoon. No warning. I was supposed to be out till evening, but a meeting got canceled and I figured I'd surprise her. The flowers were sitting outside our door. Big bouquet. Expensive. The kind you don't buy last minute. The card was taped to the plastic wrap. It said, couldn't stop thinking about last night. Just one letter. My stomach dropped, but my brain still tried to protect me. Maybe wrong apartment. Maybe a delivery mistake. Maybe a client sent them to the wrong address. Then I unlocked the door. She wasn't home. Her laptop was open on the couch. Shoes kicked off near the entrance. Her blazer hanging on the chair like she'd rushed out. The apartment smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. I didn't touch the flowers. I didn't even bring them inside. I stood there staring at them like they might explain themselves if I waited long enough. They didn't. I checked my phone. No texts. No missed calls. Nothing unusual. That scared me more than if there had been something. I went inside and sat down, trying to slow my breathing. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, that couples destroy themselves by assuming the worst. I believed that for about 3 minutes. Then I heard her laptop ping. An email notification popped up on the screen. Subject line, lunch was dangerous today. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that, but when your entire reality starts cracking, curiosity doesn't feel optional. It feels like survival. The email was short, too casual, too familiar. We need to be careful. I almost forgot where we were. I scrolled. There were more. Not hundreds. Not dramatic. Just enough. Late night messages. Midday check-ins. Jokes that didn't make sense without context. references to moments I wasn't part of, and then one line that made my hands start shaking. I hate going home after being with you. That was it. No emojis, no apologies, no explanation. Just that. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it might collapse and put me out of my misery. We'd been together 4 years. We lived together, shared rent, shared friends, shared routines, shared future plans we talked about like they were guaranteed. She worked late a lot. I trusted her completely. I was proud of her job, proud of her ambition, proud that her boss recognized her talent. That was my favorite phrase to repeat when people asked how she was doing. I replayed every conversation where she mentioned him, how she defended him when coworkers complained, how she said he was intense but fair, how she said he pushed her because he believed in her. I nodded along, encouraged her, told her to learn everything she could. I wondered how long I'd been helping them without realizing it. The door opened an hour later. She walked in smiling, talking about traffic, tossing her bag aside like it was a normal day. Then she saw the flowers. Her smile froze, just for a second, but that second told me everything. She looked at me, looked at the flowers, looked back at me. "Oh," she said, "those came today?" I asked who they were from. She hesitated. Then she said the name, her boss. She laughed lightly and said, "He's weird like that. Don't read into it. Don't read into it." I asked why they were delivered to our apartment. She said, "He knows my address for work stuff." I asked about the card. She said, "It's nothing." I asked what last night meant. She went quiet, not defensive, not emotional, just calculating. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake she'd made. It was a life she'd been living, and I was the part she hadn't figured out how to erase yet. After that pause, everything changed. Not loudly, not immediately, but permanently. She picked up the flowers and finally brought them inside, like pretending they were normal would make them harmless. Set them on the counter, adjusted the card so I couldn't see it anymore. She asked if I wanted dinner. I said no. She watched me carefully, like she was deciding how much truth I could handle without breaking. I asked her how long it had been going on. She said, "It's not like that." I asked again. She sighed and said, "A few months, while we planned vacations, while we talked about renewing the lease, while she let me reassure her on nights she came home exhausted." I asked when it started. She said, "After the conference." I remembered that conference. I'd driven her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, texted her to land safe. She came back energized, said it had been eye-opening. Now I knew why. I asked if they were sleeping together. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "It doesn't matter." That answer hurt more than a yes. I asked if she loved him. She said, "I don't know." I asked if she loved me. She said, "I care about you." Care. For years reduced to care. She told me it wasn't planned, that it just happened, that he made her feel seen. That work was intense and emotions blurred, and she didn't mean for it to go this far. She said all the words people say when they want sympathy without accountability. I asked why she didn't stop. She said, "Because every time I tried, I realized how unhappy I was here, with me." I asked if she ever planned to tell me. She said, "I was going to." I asked when. She said, "Soon." Soon meant never. I asked if he knew about me. She said yes. I asked what she told him. She hesitated, then said, "That we were complicated." Complicated. That was her favorite word. I asked if he'd ever been to our apartment. She shook her head too fast. I asked again. She admitted he'd been here once, just to talk, just to clear things up. I looked around the room and suddenly everything felt contaminated. The couch, the kitchen, the bed. I asked if they'd been together here. She said no. I didn't believe her. I asked if she planned to leave me for him. She said, "I didn't think that far ahead." That was the lie that broke me, because she had the emails, the flowers, the comfort she took in him while I stayed predictable and safe. She'd thought it through. She just hadn't finished the transition yet. She asked if we could work through this. I asked what this was. She said, "A rough patch. A rough patch. Not betrayal. Not deception. Not months of lying. Just a patch." She said relationships evolve. That people grow apart. That monogamy isn't as natural as society pretends. That I was reacting emotionally instead of logically. I asked if she'd be okay if the roles were reversed. She said that was different. Of course it was. I asked if she'd stop seeing him. She didn't say yes. She said, "I need time. Time to decide who she wanted. Time while I sat in uncertainty, competing with a man who had power over her career and already knew her at her most dishonest." I told her I couldn't do that. She said I was giving her an ultimatum. I said she'd already made one. She accused me of throwing everything away over one mistake. I asked how many mistakes it takes to become a choice. She didn't answer. That night, she slept on the couch. I stayed in the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to her phone buzz every now and then. I wondered if he was checking on her, if he was comforting her, if he felt victorious. The next morning, she left early. Didn't say goodbye, didn't kiss me, just grabbed her bag and said we'd talk later. Later never came. Instead, something else did. Something that made it impossible to pretend this was just between us anymore. Later didn't come. What came instead was a message from someone I didn't expect and didn't even know existed. It was from a woman named Rachel. She said she was sorry to message me out of nowhere, but she thought I deserved to know the truth. I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. She said she was my girlfriend's boss's wife. Ex-wife, actually. Recently, she said she found my name while going through emails during their divorce. She asked if my girlfriend still worked for him. I said yes. There was a long pause. Then she sent screenshots, hotel receipts, flight confirmations, messages that weren't vague or poetic or misunderstood. They were explicit in the most boring, routine way possible, like two people who'd done this long enough to stop pretending it was special. She told me my girlfriend wasn't the first, or the second. She told me he had a pattern: younger women, career leverage, emotional dependency disguised as mentorship. She said her marriage didn't end because of one affair. It ended because of many. I felt sick, not just because of what I saw, but because of how familiar it all sounded. The late nights, the pressure, the emotional closeness framed as professional growth. I thanked her. She said she was sorry she couldn't warn me sooner. When my girlfriend came home that night, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I showed her the screenshots. She went pale. She said Rachel was bitter, that she was exaggerating, that she didn't know the full story. I asked if any of it was false. She didn't answer. I asked how many others there had been. She whispered, "I don't know." That was it. Not the cheating, not the lies. The fact that she truly didn't know, because she hadn't wanted to. I told her she needed to leave. She said she had nowhere to go. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. She cried then, real tears this time, said she'd made mistakes, said she was confused, said she loved me. I asked why she never chose me when it mattered. She said she didn't think she had to. She packed a bag and left. 2 weeks later, she quit her job. Not because of guilt, because he cut things off. Apparently, once his divorce finalized, things got messy, and he didn't want complications. She called me after that, said she finally saw him for who he was, said she felt used. I listened quietly. Then I said, "Welcome to how I felt months ago." She asked if we could try again. I said no. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling. Financially, emotionally, professionally. That the promotion never really materialized. that the man who saw her potential disappeared once she stopped being useful. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt relieved, because the worst part of betrayal isn't losing someone. It's losing yourself trying to understand why you weren't enough. And I got myself back the moment I stopped asking that question. If you made it to the end, you already know these stories don't end clean, they end real. Subscribe for more intense Reddit-style relationship stories about cheating, betrayal, and the moments that force you to choose yourself.